Hey everyone, Davey Blackburn here. Just want to take a moment to personally invite you to our book launch event that we're holding August 1st in Indianapolis, actually right outside of Indianapolis, at this beautiful venue called the Sixpence in Whitestown, Indiana. I'm telling you, this is going to be an unbelievable night. It's going to be so sacred. Actually, it turns out that August 1st, we didn't really necessarily plan for it this way, but August 1st it was my wedding anniversary with Amanda. When we had a double wedding with her sister Amber and our brother-in-law Gavin. And so it's just gonna be a beautiful, beautiful time to celebrate Amanda, her life, her legacy, the message of nothing is wasted. And so many of you guys have asked, why have we not done any in-person events for Nothing is Wasted, like meetups and stuff like that? Well, because we have been reserving it for this particular season of launching the book to bring our Nothing is Wasted family together for the very first time. We thought that would be just such a commemorative time to do that. So you don't want to miss it. You can get tickets online right now. They are filling up fast. So make sure you go get your tickets. Make an entire weekend out of it. It's a Thursday night. You can spend a few more days in the city. If you've never experienced Indianapolis, it's a beautiful place to visit, especially at the end of summer, August kind of time. It's just absolutely gorgeous. So make sure you come out. You can have, there's general admission tickets. There's VIP tickets. General admission gets everything from that 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock time frame where we have creative storytelling, live worship. We're going to be doing some documentary stuff. There's an exclusive conversation that I have with Levi Lesko, who wrote the foreword of the book. You're not going to want to miss that. There is a live podcast recording with Daniel and Brittany Brooker right there in person. You get to be a part of the very first live podcast recording of Nothing is Wasted podcast, Nothing is Wasted Ministries. And then VIPs get in an hour early where they're going, I can't describe this immersive book experience that you're going to have, but you do not want to miss it. VIPs get that. You get some vouchers for the food trucks. You get so many, there's just so many great perks. You can go to nothingiswastedbook.com to see all the details about this launch event. Just follow that link that says launch event, and you'll be able to see the landing page for all the details about the launch event. August 1st in Indianapolis. Make sure you get your tickets as soon as possible because it is filling up fast, and we want you to be a part of this special sacred night as we celebrate releasing the message of Nothing is Wasted into the world. Would love to meet you there. Would love to shake your hand. Would love to give you a big old hug and just tell you personally, thank you for being a part of our Nothing is Wasted family. August 1st, make sure you're there.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the Nothing is Wasted podcast. I am one of your hosts, Aubrey Sampson, and joined by my other co-host, the author of the hour, Mr. Davey Blackburn. Davey, we have some fun. We have a fun arc of episodes coming up that are all related to the Nothing is Wasted book.
It is. Yeah, you're right.
Very excited about this.
This has been a long time coming. We've been wanting to, obviously we've been wanting to release the book for a long time, but we've constantly reserved throughout the last 6 years, we've reserved certain conversations for this series. So imagine that, holding in the tank.
Holding these episodes and these conversations.
Now, we did just recently record these conversations, but we haven't invited these people onto the podcast specifically. Some of them you're like, well, why would you not have invited them? Like, for instance, today, my parents, Dave and Brenda Blackburn.
Parents, the Blackburns.
And it's like, well, man, we've had 330 episodes. Something, why have we not ever had my parents on?
Yeah.
And they are incredibly wise, lots of insight. But we've reserved it for this time, a time such as this. So
this is
that's what all of these conversations are going to be. People who were very integral in my journey that when I look at them, we really haven't had most of them, we haven't had on the podcast before, but I've said, hey, we're going to wait to have this conversation for when we're releasing the book so people can get kind of a window into their perspective on this whole thing.
Okay, so your parents are first, which makes so much sense, and I just love it so much. Can you, without giving away all the goodness, tell our listeners why you picked your parents?
Yeah, well, one of the things I talk about a lot when we do our Pain to Purpose workshop at churches and stuff, I talk about training for the trial that you're not yet in, which is a phrase that I borrowed from Levi Lesko.
Yeah.
But it's
who wrote the foreword to your book?
Who wrote the foreword to the book, right?
Yes.
And who is also part of this book launch series at some point. We won't tell you when, but we have a conversation with him. And the thing that I think is really important is that storms come for everybody, right?
Yeah,
Matthew chapter 7 said storms are not biased. They're going to come for everybody.
Yeah.
But there are two different types of people. When you look at Matthew chapter 7, there's the foolish man that built his house on the sand. There's the wise man that built his house on the rock. And so while the storm comes for both of them, it's only the wise man's house that stands.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
what often we find is that two different people can go through strikingly similar circumstances in life and handle it drastically different.
Wow, that's
and
so
a lot
true.
of the reason that's the case. There are a lot of different variables within that, but a lot of that is for the foundation of faith that they had going into that storm.
Yeah.
So was their house built on the rock, right? Matthew 7 tells us what that means. It's listening to the words of Jesus and putting them into practice, right? It's not just the information, but it's information plus application.
Yeah.
That really leads to the transformation in our heart that is going to fortify us before the storm hits.
Yeah, that's good.
So I brought my parents on because one of the things you're going to read in the book is you're going to see in the first couple chapters just the legacy of faith that preceded the tragedy that we walked through. And so we're all around the hospital room and my grandparents and aunts and uncles. And there's just this rich foundation of faith that really helped undergird me as my life gets turned upside down in the moments following losing Amanda. And it was their faith that I borrowed. And so we really have my parents come on and talk about, okay, what does it look like to instill, raising up a child in the way you should go kind of thing. Like, what does it look like to help to build a foundation? You can't control what your kids are going to do. You can't, I'm learning that as parents, like, just praying, dear God, please help my kids to grow up loving you.
Please
That's
protect
that's
them.
what we want.
That's
Please
right.
protect them.
That's
so
right.
lots of prayer that goes into all of that. But that I really wanted to draw that out of them and go, hey, what are some things that we can do right now as we're trying to set up generationally a foundation of faith that's ready to withstand the storm when it comes, not if it comes, but when it comes.
Yeah, that's great.
And so we talk quite a bit about that. And then we also just talk about what was your perspective, your unique perspective looking on.
I'm very interested in hearing that because it's not like they knew this, even as they're preparing you, they did not know that you were going to walk through the worst nightmare of all time.
Right.
So
Exactly.
Their perspective on this is going to be incredible.
Yeah. Their perspective on, losing a daughter-in-law personally.
Awesome.
So their own personal grief. They absolutely adored Amanda. And then also their perspective on watching me have to wade through that storm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the unique tension of especially a mother wanting to come in and rescue her son, but knowing that there's things that she can't rescue me from, or that she can't, so you kind of hear some of that stuff as we talk and how they made some decisions around that.
Wow.
It's just a really incredible conversation.
Yeah. Very special, very powerful. Wow, Davey. Yeah. Well, I don't want to get into too many details. I think it's worth just kind of having your parents speak for themselves. So why don't we go ahead and take a listen to your conversation with Mom and Dad?
Well, Mom and Dad, it is so good to have you on the Nothing is Wasted podcast. This is a long time coming. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, what a privilege it is for us to be here with you.
You guys are longstanding listeners of the Nothing is Wasted podcast, early supporters. We call them early adopters. You probably were the first to ever listen to the Nothing is Wasted podcast, if I had to imagine. Yeah. And so it's just so special to have you guys on. I want to, we're kicking off this series on the book launch, Nothing is Wasted, the book. And so I wanted to bring people on who were a part of the journey, but had a different, they were sitting at a different seat in the table. They had a different vantage point of, the whole entire journey of, Amanda and I's love story and losing Amanda and Evie. And then, the wake of all of that and God's healing process for all of us. And so I'm really excited for our community to hear from you. I think it's going to be very unique, and there's a lot of people who are sitting in the same seat that you have sat, and they're going to really glean from this. Before we dive in, I'd love for you guys to just introduce yourselves, share with our community a little bit about who you are, where you live, what you do. Just give us a little context, and then we'll dive in.
Okay. We are Dave and Brenda Blackburn. We are privileged to be the parents of two incredible young men. Yourself, Davey, and Jonathan, our youngest son. And God has privileged us to be able to get to know three wonderful daughter-in-laws, one of which your former wife, Amanda, is already in heaven with Jesus. And then, of course, Tessa, who is Jono's wife, and Christy, who is your wife, and we just adore them. And, of course, the grandkids.
We have 5.
Yes.
Lively, perfect, huggable, lovable, fantastic grandchildren that we're crazy about, if you can't tell.
Yes.
In addition to them, we have one grandchild that is on the way.
Yeah,
That's right.
And one that is in heaven. And so we just love them all dearly.
Wow. Wow.
And
All
I
right.
don't-
So, Dad, yeah, go ahead, Mom.
I was going to say, I don't think that's you and Christy that has one on the way. That's John
No,
and
not
Tessa.
at this point. No. At the time of this recording, no, we do not. That is for sure.
Sounds like there's some hope, though.
I know, and it looks like everything. It looks like it's going to be a girl, which kind of butts up
Yes.
against the trend of the Blackburn family trend is that where it's all
Right.
boys, and so
Right.
we're grateful for that. Dad, my biggest question is this: you had a thing for nicknames, I guess, growing up, because Jonathan, my brother, it was David and Jonathan, which very strong biblical names. And then now we are called, because we have been our entire life, Davey and Jono. What in the world was behind that? How did that get started? Because we haven't been able to shake it.
I can remember Brenda being very emphatic about, well, I don't want a junior. I don't want everybody saying, calling our son Junior. And so we said, well, okay, let's just call him Davey. And that stuck. And even though your middle name is not the same as my middle name, Brenda had that great fear of raising a junior. So you became Davey, and Jonathan. I was just joking around one night, and I said, okay, so what are we going to call Jonathan? We're going to call him John as a short name, and she
Jonathan.
Yes, she was very emphatic about no nickname for Jonathan. It was going to be Jonathan all the way.
I didn't win on that one.
No, and then one day I just
Nope,
said, I can't wait till Jono was born. And she looked at me and Jono, I kind of like that.
Oh, goodness.
That's
Well,
how it
every
went.
time I introduce myself, I have to say my name twice now. They're like, David, Danny,
Yeah.
So now I go to Starbucks and I just order my drink as David, because that, but then you get lost in a sea of David. So it's just kind of a dilemma. Jono, I remember, especially when he was in high school and college, he was so excited about his nickname Jono, because as a soccer player, he thought it sounded like a foreign name and that it made him look more attractive to scouts on a roster.
Yeah.
He
Right.
wanted to change the pronunciation to Hono.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I
was,
remember.
And his mom said, oh, no.
Oh no. Okay. Well, that's where I get my dad jokes, guys. Ladies and gentlemen,
Yep.
thank you.
Sorry
That's where
about
I get them.
So we
So you guys, all right, tell us what you do. I don't think we've gotten to that.
Yeah, I'm a pastor in Western North Carolina, not far from Asheville. And I have the privilege of pastoring kind of a unique church, 2 churches that came together during COVID. And we just stayed together. And the pastor of the other church and I became very close friends. And so we have developed a leadership style in this new church. It's called One Church. And the name came from John 17:11. We were both preaching through the book of John as we met together during COVID outdoors. And we were preaching through John 17:11 on the day that our 2 leadership teams came together and said, hey, what if? And John 17:11, as you know, says it's where Jesus was praying, and he said, Father, may they be one, even as we are one. And so it's the title of the church is One Church, and we have
awesome.
Wes and I are just co-pastors, true co-pastors, and we are a part of an elder team of 8 men, and we're just part of that elder team. We just happen to be the teaching elders.
Yeah, it's a very cool thing. I think there's so many churches split and divide over issues that they mince on, theological doctrinal issues, and I think it's a really cool testament to see churches coming together and saying, what unites us, and how can we stand stronger together? And you guys actually went through an official merger to do that, which is very difficult, very rare, but it's been awesome to see from afar how that's really taken shape. So I'm just really proud of you guys for doing that. Mom, what about you?
So currently, I work as one of the academic deans at a local community college here in Western North Carolina. And I really enjoy pouring into and mentoring the next generation. And I'm also a child and family specialist. So I love working with families and children, and it's kind of my passion.
Yeah, you're our personal child and family specialist, because every time we have questions about our kids and their development, we're calling mom to ask her those questions. But yeah,
And
it's really, yeah, go ahead.
Of course, we really love our family immensely. Even though y'all are living so far away, we try every possibility that we can to get together.
Well, but they say it's us that's living so far away.
That's true.
It is.
True.
Yeah. We're both vying for and fighting for you guys to each move closer to us. My brother lives in Birmingham, Alabama. We're in Indianapolis, obviously. And I don't know if you can say split the difference, but it's kind of a triangle in some respects. You guys over in the Carolinas. But, I'd love to dive into this because you guys have a unique perspective on the story of Nothing is Wasted. Early on, you guys had a front row seat to, when I met Amanda and as our love story began to unfold, as we started to date and fall in love. Just tell me a little bit about that, what you guys, as you experienced it, just give us some of your perspective on it.
I'm going to jump in first
You go.
because I remember very vividly the night you called me right after your first date with Amanda. You had gone up to Indiana to meet her, and you were telling me that you just met the girl of your dreams. And I remember saying, "Oh yeah, right," because I always knew you were so level-headed that you would never fall for somebody on the first date. But you said, "No, Mom, really, I have." And I said, "Okay, tell me all about her." So that night, you told me all about it and your first date and about her. And I could tell you were smitten.
It took a little longer for me. I think both of us knew. But for me, I had to meet her first and see the two of you together. And then oh, yeah, Brenda's right, as usual. They are meant to be.
Yeah. We could see God's
What
hand.
was it? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we could see God's handprint all over the two of you. I mean,
Yeah.
it was fun to watch you fall in love and make plans together and to serve the Lord in ministry. And then, of course, the double wedding was definitely memorable. But there were just so many things about the two of you, the way you connected, the way the Holy Spirit brought you together. I mean, it was just so cool. You could just see it and tell. Just your interactions, the things you talked about, the things that you would... The way that even when you didn't like it so much, but when she put the Lord over you, right, and made a decision about Lent and giving you up.
Giving me up for Lent.
Yes. I mean, right then we were like, oh my word, that girl, I love her so much, because it was, one, it made you really mad. And I thought that was kind of funny. But the fact that then you kind of realized, oh yeah, what do I want in a woman? I want somebody who loves the Lord more than me.
Your mom and I have had opportunities to sit with a lot of young couples that are either just married or contemplating marriage. And a lot of times we walk away from our discussions thinking, oh, that's her dream, not his, or that's his dream, not hers. They don't really share this dream together. Man, there was no doubt that you guys had a mutual dream that God had poured into your hearts.
Yeah, very much so. And as we got to know Amanda more, we saw so quickly how she was always so caring of others. And we also had so many great times together. Some of my favorite memories is when Amanda and I would get to take those Christmas girls shopping trip. We would get to take a weekend away and just go together and shop, just the girls. And it was so much fun because she loved to have fun. And it was also time for us to have some good spiritual talks to see, like, where are we, each of us, in our relationship with the Lord? What's God doing in your life right now? It's just a time for us to really get to know each other more and more. And that was so special. And then once Weston came along, are we ready for this conversation? I remember.
I'll backtrack if I want to. Yeah, here we go.
I remember being able to see you all and Weston about every month once Weston was born. Like I would try to come there, or we had Weston with us or something. I tried to have time with you guys. He was our first grandchild, and it was just so special for us. But it was so beautiful to see how the two of you were embracing parenthood together. Like you really dove into it together. You were a team. And that was so fun to see.
Yeah, and Amanda was so thoughtful, just even in the little things with you and I. I mean, I really felt like she embraced us as her parents-in-law. In fact, sometimes it almost seemed like she embraced us as closer than that. Like when you went up one weekend and you brought back this little sign that Amanda had made. It said, Nana Weekend.
Yeah.
And I think you still have that, don't you?
Yeah, I still do.
And, and she would always ask me, how's the ministry going? We would have discussions about that at one point when I was, prior to this church, when I was planting a church, and kind of moving away from a denomination, she asked me questions about it. And then I said, I want to make sure that this is what God wants. I don't want to do anything that's going to cause any harm. And she said, well, tell me about it. And I remember explaining the whole thing. She said, well, why wouldn't you? It's just like she looked deep into my soul, and with wisdom way above her age, she just, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
she definitely had a tremendous amount of faith. That was something that one of her spiritual gifts was, a willingness to step out in faith. And then just like what you said, wisdom beyond her age always. And that's why everybody came to her for advice. It felt like even people who were older than her, would come, and she was a confidant.
Yeah, for sure.
And I remember the first time you guys really, I think, got to see a longer kind of peering into who she was when, do you remember the family vacation we all went on, extended family to Myrtle Beach, and she was able to come with us, and I remember she would and you guys can tell me your perspective, but I just remember you pulling me aside and going, I've noticed she is cleaning the kitchen and doing all the dishes and stuff, and just serving, looking to see how she can serve, and you said that's so important to have that kind of heart. It had nothing to do with dishes. It had nothing to do with the kitchen. It had nothing to do with that. It was just
the servant heart.
How she poured her heart out, to help other people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And she did it in such a way that it just fit right in. I mean, it was like everywhere she went, she was at ease. She just fit right in. And
That's a good point.
That's a gift.
Well, it's not easy to pass through the grid of your sisters and your brother.
Correct.
Mom.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is so
those of you guys
so
who you probably don't know this, but my mom has 5 sisters and a brother. And tell us about that night. The night that I proposed was the first night before I proposed. It was at Mark Tolan's wedding, and all the sisters pulled her around a table and began grilling her.
Did.
Do you remember that?
Oh yeah. Yes. So I have 5 older sisters, and then my younger brother, and definitely, I think it was at the reception, trying to pull her aside and just wanted to grill her about all these questions, including my sister-in-law as well. She was right in the mix of it, right?
Which she might be the toughest read.
Yes.
The toughest one to get through.
Yeah. And boy, she just question after question after question. And Amanda, with grace and dignity and love, just answered just from her heart. And it was beautiful.
Yeah, it was that Amanda smile.
Yeah.
I mean, everything she said was graced with that smile.
Yeah. And immediately they were all like, oh yeah, she's the one for him.
I don't know what they were thinking,
he better hurry up and
know.
ask her to marry. Don't let this one get away.
That night. We were literally leaving that reception, and I had this scavenger hunt playing throughout the city of Indianapolis for us, and proposing right there on the White River. But and I don't know what they were thinking. Was I going to press an abort button or something if it didn't go through very well? Or all the plans were already in place.
And my sister-in-law was tracking you, so she and I were tracking you so that we could jump in and she could take the pictures for you.
That's right.
She was a photographer too, along with her other job. But that was what she did on the side, and it was kind of fun to get to watch all of that and her to capture those pictures.
Yeah, it was special, very special. What's difficult about sharing in great memories that we have of that is also just the reality of what has happened in our lives. I know you guys have a unique perspective on it as well. You know, you were really the first to hear of what had happened, or at least, you know, at least what we knew of what had happened. I'd just love to hear your thoughts on that day, that season. Just kind of reflect on that for me. By the way, I will give a caveat to this. Those of you guys who are listening to this or watching this, I have no shot whatsoever in terms of being able to contain emotion because I am the son of Dave and Brenda Blackburn. So just a forewarning, every time we talk about anything sad or anything we're grateful of, there's usually a lot of emotion that follows. I mean, we had so many, every year at Thanksgiving, Christmas, we're all around with the family and, you know, extended family, aunts and uncles and stuff. And we're going around talking about what are we grateful for this year. And it's just a sob fest, you know, some of the saddest and some of the best ways all roll into one. So just a forewarning, but go ahead and give you guys some space to talk about that.
Yeah. You called us immediately after walking in and finding Amanda the way that you did. And, you know, I those first 10 minutes, I was just in a panic. And I think I told you I wasn't sure how serious it was. And I said, well, please keep us posted, call us back. And then I walked, you know, into the bedroom and I said, what are you talking about, Dave? Just keep us posted. You got to get in the car. You guys got to go.
I was already packing.
She was already packing. So we just sort of sprinted into action and, you know, jumped in the car and headed for Indianapolis.
Yeah. Yes.
The whole way we were praying, we were crying out to God and just asking Him for a miracle. I remember even at one point I had to pull over to rest area because I was so broken.
And on the way up there, I was calling and texting family, those at the church, those at my work, everyone we could think of. Just pray right now. I mean, It was a call to action for everyone.
Yeah.
And it was, I think, the most difficult part for us. I mean, man, we loved Amanda and that just hurt like crazy to think that any harm had come to her. We didn't even know, you know, what the outcome was going to be at that point in time. But, you know, just whatever she was going through, we felt that pain. But after we got there and we found out the reality of the situation, I remember that for us, it was grieving for Amanda and the loss. Horrible grieving. But then suddenly it was like a light switch came on and we recognized, wow, we got to stand by Davey. Davey and Western are the ones that are doing the grieving here. And so I think maybe that pastoral sense within me and that dad sense within me just kicked in, and I said, okay, Dave, you can grieve later. You've got to walk with your son through this. And you know, I can remember every time for the next couple of days that I embraced you, we both cried. But you know, that was sort of what we both defaulted to is, okay, our son is grieving and Amanda's family are grieving in ways that we don't even know. And so we need to be strong to walk through it with them. And you know, that was probably a little bit wrong. You know, I wanted to be the strong guy to walk through this with you as my son. And really what you needed was just a dad to grieve along with you. And, you know, that's.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened with me. After Amanda died, it was really tough just to especially watch your son go through such pain and grief. Yeah. And so for me, my focus became for the next few months was on you and on Weston and the grief that you were going through. I wanted to just be there, to help in any way possible and not even knowing what to say, but just to be there. I remember staying with the two of you at Grandma and Grandpa's for the first few weeks. And then I would fly up again as much as possible, at least once a month, to just help out, or we would take Weston to our house for a week or two, several times during those first 2 years. Especially maybe for you to get some concentrated counseling, or maybe you had to go speak somewhere or travel to Israel or whatever was going on. We just wanted to be there to help out. And I remember reading some of the same books that you read, just so that I would have something to talk to you about, to know what you were experiencing, how we could have conversation about what you were feeling, what were you thinking, what's going on. So I remember reading those books, like Through the Eyes of a Lion by Levi Lusko, and Love Does, right, by Bob Goff, and Grief Observed by C.S. Lewis. But because my focus was so much on your grief and on Weston, it took a while before I could really deal with my own grief of losing Amanda and Evie. I remember reading some of Amanda's journals and how she would write out her prayers. So that really inspired me to begin really journaling my thoughts, my feelings, my prayers, and just crying out to the Lord myself, for you guys. And then eventually it was for me, So now I have filled a stack full of journals, and that really was just the beginning of my healing process and all this grief,
Yeah, and I think her journey in acquiescing to really being more of a background support came quicker than mine. I still had that champion in me that really wanted to be dad by your side the whole way through. And I'll never forget when, the folks came up from New Spring and, they were really helping you walk through this. And I remember they were meeting and I thought, okay, I need to be in on that meeting so I can be with my son. And I walked to the door of the living room where you were meeting in mom and dad's house, my mom and dad's house. And I was stopped at the door and said, Davey will be out in just a little bit. But we really need to meet right now. And I turned and walked away and I thought, I'm the dad. What do you mean I can't be on this meeting? There was just something that flew in my face, about that. And I thought, well, how am I supposed to walk through this with my son if I'm not even going to get to be in on this meeting? And then it was like the Holy Spirit just calmed me and said, okay, Dave, how did you raise your son? Did you raise your son to rely on you or on me? And that was a aha moment for me where I was able to just back off then and say, yeah, this is his spiritual community. I was his dad. I got to be his spiritual mentor growing up, and we were his community spiritually growing up. But this is his spiritual community. He needs them right now. And I remember sharing that with my dad, and he just hugged me and said, wow, you're absolutely right. And so we just sort of took, a background and watched how God used your spiritual community to surround you and to lift you up. And I was able to rejoice through that. I went from being almost a jealous dad, to wow, yeah, I see what you're doing here, Lord. And that's my role, is to step back and pray and, give Davey hugs whenever I get close enough to him, and just whisper a prayer in his ear. But, otherwise you've raised up a team around him that he needs right now. And so that was good for me.
Wow.
It was hard, but it was good.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, I can't imagine how difficult that is, because I think about as a dad now, and my little ones, and how tough that must have been for you. And probably in a lot of seasons of life, seeing some of that, like particular seat or influence transition to other voices, which is... If we step back, that's part of the journey of every parent, right? As you begin to see other voices have influence in your kid's life. But then, I just want to underscore how much grace it took from you to go, you know what, I acknowledge this, and I'm gonna step into the seat that God has called me to in this season in his life. I don't remember any of that, obviously. It's
I knew
a complete whirlwind
absolutely
to me and all of that. But that's wow.
What's so cool about all that though, Davey, is that all our lives we prayed that God would send the right people at the right times
That's right.
into each of your lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be there and minister either when we couldn't or when you weren't listening to us when you were teenagers. We would pray for God to just put the right people there to speak the truth in maybe the same exact words we would use, but you would listen to them.
How often did that happen,
and
by the
not
way?
to us. So we would pray that. So we are so grateful for that.
Yeah, and it was always rewarding when you would come back and say, hey, here's something I've been learning. And I'm like, oh, that sounds familiar.
It sounds like exactly what we've been telling you. Yeah, well, it's true. I mean, I can look back at so many different people that were in our lives, Jono and in my life, all the way back from youth pastors, Mike McCracken, Mike and Rebecca, and coaches, and, John Rushing, and different people that were really instrumental in shaping us in different seasons. And, I know that a large credit to that is due to prayer from you guys. And
I think that's the most valuable prayer that parents can pray. I really do. That along with just, God, you touch their heart, but send the right people their way.
We're kind of I want to let's go ahead and jump to this a little bit, and then I want to go back because I want to talk a little bit more about kind of the aftermath and some of your own grieving that you guys had to almost catch up on. But right now we're starting to allude to this idea that there is a unique seat that parents sit in a child's life as they become adult children. And that plays into how, there's so many people who are watching this, they're listening to this, they're sitting in the same seat where they're going, okay, I'm watching my adult child grieve. They're not the same. They're not in my house anymore. And so it's different than if you're trying to help your 9-year-old or your 4-year-old or whatever walk through grief. And so I'm curious, I don't know if you guys had intentionality there in the moment, if you defaulted to anything, but what guided you in how to, as you're observing me go through this, what were some things that really guided you and said, okay, this is the approach we need to take with Davey? Hey friends, it is your last chance to get all the incredible pre-order bonuses for Nothing Is Wasted, the book. If you order before July 30th, you'll get over $300 worth of bonuses with immediate access to chapters 1 and 2 of the book, 5 Nothing Is Wasted mini courses, such as Position for Redemption and How Do I Hear God's Voice, as well as the Pain to Purpose Toolkit and the first video of the Nothing Is Wasted small group short film series that we're going to be releasing later this fall. But you got to hurry if you want to get these exclusive offers. This offer is only good if you pre-order the book. So grab a copy of Nothing Is Wasted wherever you buy your books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and then head over to nothingiswastedbook.com to claim your bonuses. Now, even if you don't intend to claim the pre-order bonuses, I want to ask you to do us a favor by pre-ordering the book. Let me tell you what happens when you pre-order the book. It tells all the sales distribution channels like Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Books A Million. It tells them how many books they need to keep in stock so that when the book does release, they don't run out of stock. What I've had happen with some of my author friends is they come to release day or a week after release day, and there's no more stock left because people waited to buy their book for when it came out. It's the Amazon Prime phenomenon. And then because people didn't pre-order it, they didn't know how many to keep in stock. And then it's like 2-3 weeks even before they can restock the Amazon and Barnes & Noble so that people can actually get their book. So we don't want to have that happen. We don't want to get into an out of stock situation. So if you're planning on getting the book, please go over and pre-order it so that they know how many books to have in stock for when this releases on July 30th. And then while you're at it, you might as well pick up all of the bonuses that we have for you for pre-ordering the book. Okay. I cannot wait to get this book in your hands. And I cannot wait for you to read the story that started it all here at Nothing Is Wasted Ministries. And I know that you're going to be impacted in your own story as you see the way that God really walked me through my story and how you begin to see that with God, nothing is wasted. Go to nothingiswastedbook.com to pre-order your book today.
I don't know that anything was real intentional at the moment. I think we were caught up in it ourselves, as far as just being there and just whatever we could do to serve too. Like, what's going to help you the most? But in reflecting back, actually, I hadn't really thought a whole lot about it, but God woke me up in the middle of the night back in April of this year, just, a month ago. And he told me that there are 4 things. And I was like, 4 things? What are you talking about? 4 things about parenting adult children. And it was about not just parenting them in general, but also when they're in trouble or in going through grief or struggles or whatever it is. And I think those are the 4 things that kind of resonated with me, because I was like, oh, that is what we did, But, and the first thing, of course, is pray. Like, pray for our kids as adults. Like, pray for them all the time, every day, whenever you feel the prompting of the Holy Spirit. Sometimes I've even heard the Lord just say, Davey. And I'm like, okay, I got to pray. I got to pray right now. Or Jono, or Tessa, or Christy, whatever. It's just a name that the Lord brings to my mind. And I'm like, okay, it's time to pray. So just pray for them and pray with them, for our kids. And the second thing I think which was kind of hard for us, but we tried to do during this time, was give you space. So we need to give our adult children space to live their own lives. Not the life maybe we plan for them sometimes, and some parents that might be the case, but give them space to grow and learn and seek God's will for their lives. And if your adult children are married, like the 2 of ours are, we need to give them space to leave and cleave. Like, let them learn how to be dependent on each other and not on us as parents. And during this time, the person you cleave to wasn't there anymore. And that was so difficult to know. How do we step in? Do we try to step into that space? What do we do with that? And it was just through prayer, knowing, and the guidance of the Holy Spirit to try to figure that one out. And I felt the need of getting in there and helping to be there for Weston. Because now Amanda wasn't. And so that's where I just giving you space, though, for what you needed. And I think that was what Dave was alluding to earlier, too, is seeing those other people in your life. So giving you space to let them come in there, too. And then thirdly was be there for them. Try to answer the phone every time they call, like whether you're at work or wherever
Which you do
are.
still. There's
I do.
pretty frequent FaceTimes that we have on the way home from dropping the kids off at school or whatever.
Yeah, right. And those times are sometimes when, your adult child just wants to talk, or they may want some advice, or they may need you to pray for something, or it might be an emergency, like it was when you called us that morning on November 10th. But we just need to be there for you. When hard times come, and as they do, we all know they do, and they're going to continue to come, we need to be there. It might even mean foregoing some of our own plans to be there for them. But we think that's important. This isn't, of course, I don't think it's important for us to be there for everything, like for all the little things in your life. Right. That's not possible, and it's probably not healthy for any of us. So,
there's the unhealthy side of that where, either an adult child or a parent feels like they need to call 4 times a day or, whatever. That's the unhealthy part of that. And that's where
there's a codependence that's unhealthy.
Right.
Yeah. And I think the 4th thing God was saying to me is just love them. Like, even if they're not, now this isn't in the case of you or Jono, but other parents may experience this, that they may not be living how God would want them to live, but just love them. Love them anyway. When they're learning and growing, love them. When they're parenting differently than what maybe you would, just love them. And in every situation, no matter what it is, just love them. So I think those are the 4 things. Pray for them, give them space, be there for them, and love them. That's just what I heard from the Lord. And I thought, well, reflecting back, maybe that's what we did.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, when she talks about hearing from the Lord, usually it's something the Lord's telling her to set me straight. So I'm glad it was these 4 things this time.
I don't think so.
Mom, you brought up the really good point, this idea of like, okay, that you're wrestling with, do we step in and how do we fill that void that was left by Amanda and Davey's life?
Yeah.
This that I was leaving, cleaving, and, weaving a life with, becoming one with. How do we fill in and do the same thing for Weston? Did you feel like, I know you just said that you felt like a real prompting and intentionality for Weston, for sure, which makes a lot of sense. What did you sense when it came to me? I'm curious about that because I'm curious how it coalesces with my own healing journey and some wrestling I had to do with the Lord in that time.
Yeah, I think again that idea of just being there and being present when I could be, and just hanging back and waiting for you to kind of come and talk. Or, at times I knew I was asking you questions, and at some point I think you were like, I can't do that right now. I can't answer that right now.
Yeah, there were definitely times where.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, I'll just back off and just pray and be here and listen and be available. And when you're ready, and there were times when you finally were ready, that you were like, then you'd come and you'd talk and you'd share and you whatever.
Right.
But it was like, okay, are you ready to share this with me? Like, is there anything you can share? Where are you? Like, it was hard for us to know where you were in your headspace sometimes.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, where are you? What are you thinking? And what's going on?
Right.
How can we help?
Right.
But
and that's pretty typical for me too, right? I mean, you would say I'm more of like reflective. I process through things internally before I externalize them.
Yeah, it was very difficult.
Whereas some people,
Yeah, it was really tough in that season, though, to see you hurting so badly. And there were times that, when I came up and stayed with you in Weston once, I remember specifically walking in, Wes and I had been out playing in the yard, just having a good time. And I walked in and you were just sitting there staring into space. And, you just had that hurtful look in your eyes. And, where do I go from here? And those were painful times.
Yeah.
Those were grieving moments for me as a dad.
Yeah.
And, and I really didn't know what to say in those times. So I would just kind of try to say something encouraging. And, and I remember one time I walked in, it was like that. And I talked you into going to Chick-fil-A. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but
Chick-fil-A is a pretty good coping mechanism.
It is a good coping mechanism. But we were sitting there, and I had one of those. What is it?
The milkshakes.
One of the milkshakes, whatever it is, a peach milkshake or something that they had at that time. And I was eating it with a spoon, and I pulled out a spoonful, and Weston's eyes got really big, and I said, "Can I?" And you were just kind of off in space, and you said, "Sure, go ahead." And I gave him the spoonful, and I mean, his eyes lit up and he just started bouncing up and down, and we both just hee-hawed. I mean, we were cracking up. Almost fell out of my chair. I remember I was laughing so hard. And Weston just wanted more of that peach shake. And then both of us looked at each other and said, Amanda would not be happy with this. And then we laughed even harder. So it was just, it was one of those healing moments, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny. We have some friends that we hang out with quite a bit now, and we hadn't, until recently, but he and this couple, he said, yeah, during that season, I knew you, I knew of you, and I saw you an awful lot at Chick-fil-A. I said, yeah, I was at Chick-fil-A a lot with Weston. Yeah. Kind of became second home to us. But I think it's really cool as you guys were wrestling through that, the Lord giving you that insight, because one of the most pivotal parts of my wrestling was, and obviously that song that we wrote as a worship team at Resonate, the Be That For Me, came out of this idea that I kept wrestling with God. How are you? I can see how you, Jesus, can fill in the space of a husband for a grieving widow. Yeah. But how in the world can you be a wife to me? Right. How in the world can you do this? And I think that was such an important part of my journey that it brought me back to this complete dependence on the Lord.
Right.
Something that I had experienced and felt to a certain degree before meeting Amanda, But when you get married and you begin to, rightfully so, you begin to lean on each other, then sometimes you lose some of that just complete and utter dependence on the Lord. And he was bringing me back to that place in that season of going, okay, I need you to be everything that I need. I need you to be that for me. So it's really interesting how that dovetails with what you guys were observing and wrestling and going, how do we step in? Oh, we've got to give some space and we have to let him process through this stuff, you know. And,
but I will say this, after talking about, you know, how at times we saw you sort of staring off and you know, being contemplative, I guess, and really hurting. We also saw you leading strongly through all of this. I mean, the morning after she was pronounced dead, you know, you're on national TV talking about, I choose to forgive. And I know you weren't feeling forgiveness at that point in time, but you chose to forgive. And I think that's something that's so important for people to understand about forgiveness. It's not a feeling, it's a choice. And it's a hard choice sometimes. And I tell people a lot that, you know, I used to hear or read that scripture where it says, and a child shall lead them. And I always wondered, you know, exactly what does that mean? And then I lived it with you leading strongly. You really led our family through a lot of that when I wasn't feeling that forgiveness. And I kept hearing you say, I choose to forgive. And boy, that spoke volumes to me. So I just want to thank the Lord for the strength that he built into your life. Yeah,
for sure.
You know, one of the things that was really extremely pivotal, you know, this comes out in the book. It's a really monumental moment in the book. It was such a monumental moment, I think, for all of us as a family in the hospital, was all the family, extended family there. You know, it seemed like I don't know, everybody that wasn't there clearly. I mean, we have a huge family on both sides, but there were so many people there who had just a strong foundation in the Lord, and there was worship that was breaking out there in the room. And, you know, in fact, Christy had a friend who was a PA at the time. They were in a small group together. I didn't know Christy, she didn't know me, but this PA friend, you know, we had mutual friends at the time, pastors that the church that Christy was going to, I knew. And so they had relayed to this small group, hey, you need to be praying for this family. And then, so this PA was on the hall below us and came up and observed and witnessed the worship that was going on and texted back that group and said, you wouldn't believe what's going on. It's like a revival's breaking out here. And so it was just such a really marking thing for me, but it's testimony to the heritage that we have. And we say often, you know, train for the trial that you're not yet in, that there's an important foundation that has to be built. Well, you guys are my parents, and so you played such an instrumental role in building that foundation for me. And, you know, even though I joke around sometimes, right? It's like I say this in messages to get a little laugh that I was drugged to church. I had a drug problem growing up, and I was drugged to church every time the doors were open. The truth is there were seasons I loved being at church. There were seasons I had totally different priorities. And but in that moment, I was so glad of the foundation that we that I had going before me. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? What was, from your observation now, if you're sitting across from parents of young children, or how would you exhort them in that, you know, and help them to understand how important laying that kind of faith-filled foundation is?
Well, let me just tell you this. Before you were born, in fact, I think Brenda was pregnant with you. I went to the airport to pick up a mentor to many of us as youth pastors and pastors. His name was Keith Drury, and Keith recently passed and is rejoicing in heaven. But Keith asked me on that trip back from the airport, he said, Dave, what are your truest desires? And I said, wow, man, that's a loaded question. He said, okay, tell me this. What do you want? If you could write your own tombstone at the end of life, what do you want it to say? And I thought about it, and I thought, you know, I think what I want my tombstone to say is, here lies Dave Blackburn. The husband of Brenda and the father of Davey and Jono. And he loved Jesus with all his heart. And I think sorry about that. I think that conversation with Keith really solidified for me the importance that I have as a dad. And honestly, even through the years of ministry, when you were growing up, there were times that I was more than willing to push aside some things that dealt with ministry just so that I could spend time with you and Jono and Brenda. And and I took some ridicule for that at times, but I'm so glad I did. Those are years that we'll never get back, and I'm glad that we did it the way we did.
Yeah, I remember one of the things that I admire the most about your dad was how he always said that, his most important parishioners was me and you boys, above everything else that would happen as a pastor or, leading a church or the difficulties or being a part. There's just so much in leading a church and, doing the Lord's work. But his priority was family right after his relationship with the Lord. And truly admire that out of him. But if you want to go into parenting, we can talk about that too.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's the critical part of that foundation is the prioritization of your family over everything.
Absolutely.
And, you guys were consistently present and available always. We took it for granted growing up, I think. But now I watch and observe other people, and we sit around and talk with friends of ours who talk about their parents and their upbringing and, their quote unquote trauma. And for some of them, they did have actual trauma, and some people are attributing things that really, it doesn't seem like trauma at all. And I sit there and I go, I don't have a single thing to say, because you guys weren't perfect, I know, but it was
far from
you guys were very intentional about making sure that, we were being brought up to love the Lord and serve the Lord. You couldn't force that on us, but you created and cultivated an environment where that was made possible for the Lord to really intercept our lives.
God's grace.
Yeah. I said, a lot of times I say, it's all God, because it's in spite of us, because we made a lot of mistakes, but it's all God. And I think besides this, what Dave's talked about is also, just prayer. Lots of prayer went into raising children. And even before, while you all were still in my womb, we were praying for you and praying for your future spouses and just, dedicating you to the Lord in all things. And then later on it was, Lord, please keep them humble, keep them under your hand, keep them in your will at all times. And raising kids back then, we didn't have all the parenting books and videos and small group resources and podcasts, that are out there today.
You might be better for that because there are
it's too much information
of advice
now.
that's being, and a lot of it's conflicting and confusing. And we're like, wait, should we do it this way? This way? This seemed to contradict each other. Like, what are we supposed to do? And I think it goes back to what you're saying, like prayer, undergirding prayer is the most important thing, right? Like that. And I think that's the thing that sometimes we can get so sidetracked by the tips and tricks of parenting that,
and it's a generational thing. It's a generational thing too. My dad wrote a lot into my life.
I was going to say, because a lot of what we depended on was what we knew growing up and our godly parents and heritage that was before us.
It's so important.
Yeah. Were you going to say something else there?
Nope.
About your dad?
No.
Because your parents were amazing too.
My dad's awesome.
Yeah. And, those are the things that I think that were our foundation in parenting. And then, other things that I think are important that we tried to do. We weren't always the best at sometimes, but we tried to have consistent family devotions together. Do you remember those little devotional books that we would use? Those little family devotional books? And we would talk about spiritual things in the home all the time. Like, that was so important for us. We played contemporary music in the home. Like, we had contemporary Christian music on, and I think that built up.
That's old stuff now.
Well, it is old stuff now, but at the time, it was contemporary Christian music that,
Christy and I both still sing, Stephen Curtis Chapman and Ray Boltz and
there you go.
You heard a lot of that growing up.
Yeah. But those are the things that help to build that atmosphere in the home. And then, of course, we played games together. We laughed a lot together, and of course, we went to church together as a family every week. Yeah. Sometimes 3 times a week, right? But one of the things that really stands out to me, I think, when you're thinking about all of this, is that we wanted to make sure we gave you every opportunity possible to make a decision for Jesus. Mm-hmm. So we wanted you to go to every opportunity that might be out there. We wanted you at youth every night or every time they had youth. We wanted you to go to those kids camps, youth camps, those youth conventions. We wanted you to go and experience these things because we wanted you to grow in your relationship, first make a decision to follow Jesus, but then grow in your relationship with the Lord and be able to make those decisions for him all along the way. And we wanted to provide all those opportunities for you and encourage you to go. And then while you were gone, we prayed the whole time. Yeah.
I think that's really big because, I think sometimes even parents, friends that we have, there's a pressure to like lead your kid to Christ or lead your kid into those kinds of decisions. And I look back in my own journey and I realize, wait, you aren't actually directly a part of that conversation in the moments where I made the decision, but you were covering us in prayer. You were giving us the opportunities. You were making sure that we were in the room for that, hopefully for the word to really take root.
Yes.
And that's huge. That was so huge that we're constantly being given that kind of exposure. I'd love to, I feel like we could talk for several hours.
Yeah.
There are some podcasts that are like 3 hours long. That would be appropriate for this conversation right here. But,
no.
I'd love for you to share a little bit too on your perspective on, as you're seeing me go through and starting to emerge from kind of that really dark place of grief. And then, as God brings Christy into my life, just kind of share a little bit of your perspective on that season. Hey friends, we're just a few short days away from our Nothing is Wasted book launch event taking place on August 1st here in the Indianapolis area. Now, I know so many of you have followed along with my story and you've been a part of everything we do here at Nothing is Wasted. And I would love for you to be a part of this incredible event. We're going to celebrate Amanda's life and legacy and the launch of this story, the Nothing is Wasted message, into the world. But we also know that travel is expensive. Summer's a busy time. And so we want to remove all the barriers from you not being able to be a part of the event. That's why we've figured out a way to offer to you. We've had people ask about this, and we figured out a way to offer to you, our Nothing is Wasted community, a way to join us from wherever you are, no matter where you're at in the country. You can be a part of the live streaming of the book launch event. You can now get a virtual launch event ticket for only $15. And you can be a part of this meaningful night as we share the Nothing is Wasted story with the world. So even though you can't be in the room right there, you can live stream this for only $15 wherever you're at. Now, the night's going to include interactive storytelling, a live podcast recording with me and Christy and our good friends Daniel and Brittany Brooker. And you'll even get to hear me read a portion of the book in I'm telling you, a powerful and creative way that you're not going to want to miss. Even though you're not going to be able to be a part of the food trucks and the other things that we have available for the entire event, you will get to be a part of the programming for this live streaming. So we want you to be on your computer or in front of your TV, piping this in from wherever you're at. Now, I would love for you to be there in person, but I understand it's very difficult. And so we wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to celebrate the launch of Nothing is Wasted with us. So in order to get your virtual book launch event tickets, go to nothingiswastedbook.com, click the link launch event, and follow the promptings to the virtual ticket. And then plan to join us at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, August 1st, as you live stream this incredible event that we have planned. I cannot wait to celebrate with you. Even if we can't do it in person, I can't wait to do it with you wherever you're at. Go to nothingiswastedbook.com, get your $15 virtual ticket, and join us Thursday, August 1st for the book launch event.
But I loved Christy from the very beginning. I loved her spunk. I loved the way that she looked at you and the way that you looked at her. I just felt good about it from the very start, and I still do. Christy is, I don't know how she feels, but as far as I'm concerned, she's my daughter. I mean, I just love her in that way. And I think it wasn't very long into your dating that both your mom and I felt very strongly that only God could cause these two lives to intersect in this way. Mm-hmm. And we really felt like, again, just like we did with Amanda, that he had his handprint was all over, your relationship. And we really felt the same way with Christy. Now, both of you were coming into this relationship with pain from your past. Mm-hmm. And so we knew it wasn't going to be a simple relationship. But we just really felt strongly that God was bringing you guys together. And I celebrate Christy and what she means to us and most of all to you.
Mm-hmm. I remember I met Christy in March before your first date.
That's right.
And I thought...
I actually just asked her out on a date that day, I think, when it was the first time I got the guts to ask her out.
Yeah. And I thought, I was like, this looks like it could have some potential, and I finally saw something in your eyes. For the longest time, there was this darkness that was over your eyes, a sadness. And then when I saw you look at Christy, what joy it brought to me to see that little bit of spark and twinkle come back in your eyes. Wow, that was huge for me as a mother. And I could certainly tell quickly things were progressing. And I remember when you brought her home to North Carolina in August. I knew then that the two of you were in love. I was like, it was obvious. And I remember one day we had taken you all to the lake and to the park to enjoy a day. And we were out shooting baskets. I don't know if you remember this.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and
I remember
on
clearly.
right there on the basketball court where we were out there all shooting baskets and stuff.
Only your mom could do this.
I just blurted out. I said, "So, when are you all going to get married?" And Christy kind of looked around, and you looked at me like, "Mom."
So what you did is you said, "Christy, when's your next break from PA school?" And she said, "Well, I'll have Christmas break."
Well,
And
that came after.
So a December wedding?
That's exactly what I said. Later, when we brought it up again, you're right. You had thought that if you were going to get married, it might be in a year or so. And I said, why wait? What about December? When you have that next break. Yeah, absolutely. I was like,
which we had not even entertained that soon.
No.
It actually freaked Christy out. We got back from that trip and she started pulling away and she shared this publicly before, but it just started getting her like, wait a minute, what? And touching both of our pain points. And when we finally got home and talked through it, we realized we do know that we're supposed to be married and that God's in this and that we love each other. So that's what happened. Yeah. We thought that was the most outrageous thing in the world to even suggest. And then guess what?
But we just felt like we could see it all over the two of you.
Yeah.
And we're like, if this is what God wants, why are we waiting? Let's merge these two families. Let's get this, And I was thrilled to see that, again, Weston being able to have this mother in his life that could help you and to help Weston in this journey together.
And Christy has embraced that so beautifully. I mean,
And we just love seeing how God has just blended you all together so well. And the way that you're both loving the kids and parenting together and just diving into ministry together. And the way she embraces the story of Amanda and how to steward that so well.
Yeah.
Wow. It's just not many people could do that. And she's doing it beautifully. And we're just so proud of both of you. And how God is using it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the beautiful thing is when, we were walking through those early days of grief with you, and we saw the light go out of your eyes, so to speak. And then to see it come back with Christy, it was almost like, we were praying, Lord, just bring the joy back into Davey's life. And first God had to do that with himself. I mean, he doesn't bring people into our lives to complete the joy. He does that himself. And you sought hard. Yeah. And you paid the price of really leaning into God. Yeah. And then he rewarded that. Yeah. I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. It's so interesting to hear your perspective and to know that you could see that, because it's exactly what I experienced. Now I had the language for it. I didn't back then, but that it was the first time my heart woke back up when I met Christy, and I didn't think that it was possible for it to wake back up. Right. Yeah. But that then traveled all the way to my eyes, my countenance, that you could see it as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just a really interesting thing to reflect on.
Our capacity.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Our capacity to love always surprises me. When my mom died and Dad remarried, I didn't think there was any way I could love another mom that way. Mm-hmm. And man, we love Mom Martha. Like she's been my mom longer than my mom was my mom. Yeah. And so, the love is there. And then watching you walk through that, and I wasn't sure, how we were going to feel about you meeting another young lady. Yeah. And we even had conversation, we're gonna, whether we are or not, we're gonna have to look happy about this. And when Christy walked into your life and we saw your eyes light up, it was like, here we go.
Wasn't hard at all.
It was, we're not having to act anything. I mean, just beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thankful.
That's awesome. Mm. Mm-hmm. Now you guys are getting to see some of the ripple effects of what has come of Amanda's life, legacy, the ministry of Nothing is Wasted. You've been a part of the entirety of the journey, obviously. With the little bit of time that we have left, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I mean, Mom, you've led Pain to Purpose a couple of times, in your church. And so you're seeing lives transformed. You have over the past almost 9 years now, lives transformed. Amazing. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that, your perspective, and how you would commentate on that.
Yeah. Well, this last Pain to Purpose group that was the third group that I was able to lead, what a privilege it is for me to facilitate that. When you lead or facilitate something, you really get so much more out of it yourself than probably those even in the course. I think that the first time I taught Pain to Purpose was one of the times when I really took time to reflect on my own pain of losing Amanda and Evie. And, I hadn't taken a lot of time to grieve myself. And so going through that, I was able to really grieve myself, and really think about my own personal pain. And going through that Pain to Purpose the first time was so helpful for me personally. And then every group that's taken the Pain to Purpose course that I've been able to facilitate has been very different. Each group is different, and the dynamics and what you're doing, but it's exciting to see. This winter group, this last one I facilitated, was all women. The other two groups were not, and this one was 16 to 18 women. And we had women in this group had experienced so many different types of pain. Those who had experienced death of a child, death of a spouse, divorce, child trauma, church trauma, and so many other pain points. I mean, these were incredible women who shared so openly and honestly. And we learned together, we cried together, we prayed together. It was just amazing to see the victories that some of them experienced after so many years of hurt. And the way God moved in our lives together as a group. I mean, it has been just so rewarding for me to see how God has used you, Davey, to partner with God, to use your pain to touch so many people who are walking through their own pain. And the Pain the Purpose course is just one of those ways. And it's just so cool to see. I mean, we've had so many opportunities to speak to other people because of our stories, watching people, really finding hope, finding peace, finding victory has been amazing.
Yeah, there are times that I've been at, whether it's a church conference or even just, I remember a time we were walking through a mall, and somehow we got into a conversation with someone, and he stuck out his hand and said, I'm Bob whatever, and I said, I'm Dave Blackburn, and he just stopped. He said, do you know Davey Blackburn? I said, yeah, I have a son named Davey Blackburn. You're Davey's dad? And he'd never met you, but they had followed your story. And we find that over and over again, that God is using, and it almost sounds so cheap to say the story of Amanda, but using Amanda's life, her passion for Jesus, and your passion now to make sure that God gets the honor and the glory in all of this. We just see that over and over again.
The way you've let God use you and your story has helped me personally to be able to be bold in sharing this story with others, our story with others. I mean, we encounter people all the time, like Dave said. I mean, so our story of pain, grief, healing, forgiveness, redemption, I mean, we see God's hand at work in providing so many opportunities for us to share and talk to people and pray with people. I mean, I've been even talking and praying with people at work, at the doctor's office, at the store, even in a parking lot. Like, I've shared with coworkers in my office and prayed with them as the Holy Spirit, just basically took over and led them to the point of turning their lives over to Jesus. Yeah. And just as recently as this past Saturday at the graduation, at our graduation at our school, I was able to talk for a few minutes with our graduation speaker right after our first graduation. And I talked to her about Nothing is Wasted on our story. And after the second graduation, and I'm walking out and I see her again, and I'm like, great job, you did so good. She goes, I've got it here on my phone. I've got the website. I mean, just all those things. We've just been able to share so many things, opportunities that God has brought that maybe we would have never been able to share with people before,
I was talking to a guy in our town just a couple days ago, and he mentioned your story, and he said, I don't know how Davey does it. I could never do that. And this guy's going through some pain, and he said, I could never do that. And I said, oh, Davey didn't do it. No. Jesus did it.
Yeah.
I said, it's only Jesus in us that can do this. Right. And so it just gave me, I mean, it was a 1 minute conversation, but in that conversation, as he had to hurry off, that's going to go with him, is just, hey, this is about Jesus. And only he can do it.
That's so true.
So true. I always tell people that too. They're like, I don't know how you do it. And I'm like, well, do you have the Holy Spirit inside of you?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way that anybody can walk through this. And he's going to equip you. First Peter says that he equips us for everything that we need for life and godliness. And that doesn't mean just life and godliness if we're going through really great things. Like if life's good, no matter what we go through, we can... no matter what life brings us, and we can
it's
still
not that
walk
bumper
in
sticker
holiness
that
and
says
godliness.
I'm blessed, right?
No. I mean, and it depends on what you define as blessing. I mean, we certainly feel blessed in the sense of spiritual blessing, that we have a nearness to God and a gratitude for what he is doing in us and through this story.
Absolutely.
And that to me feels like blessing. And I know this journey has been the same for you guys on some level, but for me, it's like I didn't ask for this. Nobody would have wanted this. We would have never written or seen our story playing out like this. And for a little while, there was a season, Christy and I both, where we were like, I don't want to talk about it with anybody. I want to put my hat on when I'm in an Uber or I'm at the airport or whatever and just not talk to anybody about this. And I felt like maybe a conviction and an encouragement from the Lord where he was like, I want to give you some opportunities not to waste this. Like there is a lot of impact that can happen if you just lean into this. And for whatever reason, we got a renewed vigor to share what God's doing. And I've seen the same thing, just personal, individual conversations that have just been transformative for people just by going, hey, here's what I've experienced, and God can get you through what you're going through too.
Yeah. Right.
So
Thank him.
Yeah.
absolutely. Guys, we'll have to have you back on. Maybe we'll have you back on for a full parenting conversation. That's what we'll do. We'll dive in on all the ins and outs of parenting. This has been so special for me, and I know this has been special for our community to hear from you guys. If you guys want to meet my mom and dad, at this point, I have no idea if the tickets are all sold out for the launch event, but they'll be at the launch event August 1st. So if they're not sold out, go get your tickets. Come join us in Indianapolis. You can meet mom and dad. You can sit down and talk to them about all things parenting or whatever it is. I promise you, they're gonna. They are. There's nobody like you guys, and I'm so grateful for what you've done for me and how you've been there for me in every single situation, good and bad. And I'm grateful that you would spend some time and share with our community.
Well,
Thank you so much.
Been a privilege.
Do you mind if your old dad prays for you?
Sure.
I promise
Yeah,
not to
that
get
sounds great.
emotional. Father, I thank you so much for what you're doing through Nothing is Wasted.
Amen.
And I have no doubt that you have raised up this ministry for something that goes far beyond any purpose that any of us could even dream about. And Lord, we're seeing that happen in people's lives. I thank you for Davey. And I know that whenever Satan begins to lose battles in people's lives, whenever trauma ceases to really rule lives and people find victory, then there's nothing that makes him more angry. And so, Lord, I pray that you would protect Davey, Christy, and the kids, and protect Nothing is Wasted ministry. And I pray, Lord, that you would continue to give them strength and wisdom to move forward with your grace, your goodness, and your strength. I ask it in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I love you, buddy.
We love you.
I love you guys. Thank you.
Davey, I love your parents, Dave and Brenda Blackburn. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you so much for it's also just beautiful to kind of get to know you and get to know you, that legacy of faith like you were talking about. And this is obviously such a difficult thing, but I think it's going to connect with so many of our Nothing is Wasted community, just hearing parents grieve and watch their kids grieve, And so I'm so honored that they would share their story here. And thank you for bringing them on, and thank you for saving them, like you said, for such a time as this. What a great conversation.
Yeah, I think the most profound, I know we're not going to spend a lot of time reflecting back talking about this, but I will say this, there's a parent who's listening to this. The most profound thing that you can draw out of that conversation is just show up.
That's
just
it.
Be there.
That's it.
That's when I look back on it. My dad, and I read about this quite a bit in the book, that like my dad was there, and I don't remember things that he said. I don't remember, but like he was a present father, which helped to form a foundation for me through my whole life to know that God, our Father, our Heavenly Father, is there. He's present.
Davey, that makes me want to cry. That's very, very powerful.
Yeah. That I think is the most substantial takeaway that parents can have right now, and how to walk with your kids in grief. It's just to be there. So you can pre-order the book. It's available for pre-order right now. July 30th is the actual release date, and at this point there's still maybe tickets left available for the launch event August 1st in Indianapolis.
Good.
Really excited. This is going to be such a sacred evening.
I cannot wait.
And the things that we have planned for this evening, you're not going to want to miss this. Nobody else is going to be able to have access to see this and what's going on there. And it's just God's going to move in a powerful way.
I believe that. Yeah.
We were meeting with our production team that's putting all this on just last week, and we were all in tears as we were walking through kind of the run of show. And it was just like, wow, this is going to be powerful, but hopeful, right? It's not like tears of anguish or sorrow. It's tears of hope. It was just so I want you to be there, because it's going to be a healing event. Aubrey's going to be hosting the entire thing. It's going to be awesome.
Cannot wait.
Yeah. So
it's going to be really, really amazing. All right. So you can pre-order the book. You can find out more about the event at nothingiswasted.com/book or nothingiswastedbook.com. You can also always find and follow and engage with Davey and I at Davey Blackburn, at ObSamp, or at Nothing Is Wasted Ministries. We want to thank Sleeping at Last for providing all of the music for the Nothing Is Wasted podcast. And be sure to come back next week because we have another incredible book-related, Davey and Amanda-related conversation that we cannot wait to share with you. Let's go ahead and take a listen to part of that now.
Well, since we're talking about pain and dire circumstances, I'd like to put it in the context of wilderness.
Okay.
And talk just a little bit about wilderness. I'm trying to decide how technical to get, and I want to try to keep it as simple as possible. Wilderness is defined as just a hard time.
Yeah.
You know, and if you look even in the history of Israel, after Israel was released from the bondage of slavery of 400 years in Egypt, and, you know, they wind up doing the 40 years of wilderness wanderings. There's a lot to unpack there, but I'll leave that there for the moment. And so for Israel, wilderness became pretty synonymous with hard times. Well, here's a fairly new discovery for me. I was listening to a rabbi speak, and this is really important. He said, the Hebrew word for wilderness is God speaks.
That's right.
And it's like, whoa. Say that again, please. And basically it was the word for wilderness is midbar, to speak is dibar, and I'm sure my enunciation and pronunciation is awful.
Yep.
So forgive me of that. And then he basically said that it was literally true for Israel when they were in the wilderness wanderings, but it's also just true in general that God tends to speak in our world wilderness experiences very powerfully and very strongly, but we often, this is now not the rabbi, but we miss the point, because in our wilderness and our wilderness wanderings, our focus primarily goes to making whatever the wilderness is go away as quickly as possible and as painlessly as possible. And once again, the focus is on I want relief, and I need relief, and I must have relief. And so that's where all of our energy goes. And the problem is that we don't hear God speaking in our own wilderness because we're not listening.
Wow.
Hey friend, if you liked this episode, be sure to like and subscribe so that you can stay in the loop every time Nothing Is Wasted releases a piece of content here on this YouTube channel.